Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be going through process mapping in the form of a walkthrough. So we're going to build a process map step by step, as well as discussing the individual items that we're going to use to do so, hopefully demonstrating how you would do so yourselves, particularly if you're developing a process map for an assignment or for your seminar exercises. So as a refresh of where we were in the design, multi-stage design process itself, we need to have a clear concept. So you have an understanding of the nature and the value of the service from the perspective of the user. We've identified our package, so which elements and components we need to actually deliver the value to the user themselves. And now we're going to be going on and designing the process itself. So all of the activities which are needed to deliver that value should be included in your process map. So we're going to start just by establishing our concept again. Now this is quite important. The role of a concept isn't just to kickstart the design process. It is also there to keep us focused on the purpose of the service and to make sure that we don't include any elements which are ultimately not going to deliver value to the customer. What we want to do is to make sure that any activities or any resources or components included in the service directly contribute to the value that we're seeking to deliver to the user. If there's something which delivers value outside of the concept, i.e. it is nice for the user to have, but is not part of the core value proposition, then it's not something that we can raise revenue for, and therefore it's a waste of resources. Or if it's something which doesn't actually contribute to the value, so i.e. it's not directly adding value to the service, and it's not supporting or enabling other parts of the service which do directly add value, then again it's a use of resources that is extraneous, which is unnecessary and therefore is wasteful. So we want to have a nice lean process which focuses on the concept, which focuses on delivering the value needed, identified in the concept, and doesn't get sidetracked or include unnecessary elements. So here we want to make sure students are able to get laptops at short notice. They're able to walk in and book a laptop if none are there to take out immediately, so i.e. reservation system, and that's it. That's the entire value proposition. That's the concept of the service that we're delivering. Okay, we had our package that we identified. So we need sufficient numbers of laptops with the required specifications. We have a staffed area, so we have staff who will be trained in this process working in the library. We have a storage area for laptops. We have a system which enables us to track each laptop, check them in and out, and reserve laptops for particular students. And we have a link with ID support for repairs if that's needed. So we're actually going to go ahead and start developing our process map from that concept and that package. So the first is this shape here. In some process maps you may just see a normal circle, or in this case a oddly shaped oblong. Either's absolutely fine. Process mapping is built on conventions rather than hard and fast rules. As long as you stick to a valid set of conventions, you'll be fine. So every process needs a trigger point. So the trigger here would be a student walking in to the staffed area, the staff desk in the library, and making a request for a laptop. So that would begin our process, and therefore that's the start. So every process map does need a trigger point at which the service itself begins. The next item would be an inspection point. So the first thing we would want our staff member to do upon hearing a student requires a laptop to be checked out is to see if there are any available. So although that may not sound like an inspection because we're not inspecting, a laptop itself, it is still an inspection point insofar as we're referring to another item. So in this case, we're referring to the booking system or the file or the spreadsheet, whatever system you have, to find information. So that's represented by a square. So anytime you have an inspection of information on a system or inspection of a physical item, you're going to represent that through a square. So in this case, we have the oblong leading into the square. The student has asked for a laptop, which triggers our service. And the first step that we need to do is to check availability. Is there a laptop available for the student? Now, once you have that information, that leads to a decision point. So obviously there's two possible outcomes. One is that there is a laptop available to be lent out, or there is not an available laptop there. So that's any decision point where there's going to be branching off should be represented by a diamond shape. So any time in your process map where you're going to have 2, 3 or more branches from a single point, we need to make two things very clear. One thing is that we do not have branches coming off any other representation in the process map. So even though there's a square there for an inspection point, we don't have two different elements branching off. Elements should only be branching off from a clearly defined decision point. And that's because we want to identify where a decision has to be made within the process. And that's more difficult to do if you don't have clearly marked decision points. Secondly, your branches have to be clearly labeled. So here there's two possible outcomes. So the decision is going to be leading to one of these two outcomes. One is we're not going to supply a laptop from the available stock because there are none. And the other is that there are available laptops and we are going to supply that particular laptop. What you don't want to have is multiple branches where it's not clear what the decision was that led to that particular branch. So every time we branch off in our process map, we're going to clearly label what leads to that branch being followed. So in this case, it's a yes-no decision, really. There is availability or there is not availability. Or we are going to supply a laptop from our stock or we're not going to supply a laptop from our stock. If you're dealing with a more complex process map, you may have 3, 4 or 5 different branches, but each of those should still be very clearly labeled. So we're losing a bit of space here. So if we rearrange this and have this in the corner. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the no branches first of all, and we'll come back and then complete the yes branches. So let's say we don't have availabilities, therefore we're not going to supply a laptop to the student who's there. We have another decision point where we're going to interact with the student and ask, do you want to make a reservation? So apologies, we don't have a laptop at the moment, but we can reserve one for you when it comes in. And just like before, we have two clear possible outcomes. So therefore, the decision point needs to have two clearly labeled branches coming out from it. If we do the same thing and follow our no branch first, we're going to use the same symbol that we use to start the process to end the process. So if the student declines to make a reservation, there's nothing more we can do for the student. That brings the service interaction to an end. So the service will finish at this point. So let's go back and look at our yes branch. So let's say the student does want to make a reservation. Well, the next thing we need to do is to actually enable that reservation. It is part of our concept. It is part of the value being offered by the service to the users. So here we would bring in a new symbol, a nice round circle. So this is an operation or an activity that directly adds value to the user. we'll also have a rectangle that represents other types of activities, but a circle for one which is directly adding value. So in this case, we're going to reserve the laptop on file. So we're going to book that laptop on our system for this particular student to pick up when it comes back in. So that's our direct operation that we take place. The next one we have to do is to provide the student with a booking reference. So they're actually able to come in, give that booking reference that we've generated through our previous operation by our previous operation activity by reserving the laptop by providing them with a booking reference number. Once we've done this, then we can bring the process to an end as well. So the student will either not want a reservation, so the process comes to an end, or they do want a reservation, so we'll make the reservation on the file or on the system, which generates a booking reference. We provide that booking reference to the student, and then the process again comes to an end. Now, if we go back now and look at what we would do if the student makes the request, we check the availability and there is a laptop in stock. So we are going to supply the laptop from stock. So this is following the first decision point. We're following the yes branch. We need to bring in a new symbol here in our process map, and that's going to be an arrow. Now, the arrow can be pointing anywhere, generally in line with the way your process map is drawn, but that arrow represents some kind of physical movement. Identifies that the service now requires a move from one area to another area. So here is going to be to actually retrieve that laptop that we've identified from storage. So the next step here is a inspection point. So once we've retrieved the laptop, we need to make sure the staff actually check if it's working. So the value in our concept is to provide a laptop to students who need it to do the university work. A non-functional laptop which doesn't work for whatever reason is not fulfilling the value proposition that we have in our concept for this service. So we spoke before about a square represents an inspection of some kind. So here the inspection is to make sure the laptop is fully working. So plug it into the charger, turn it on, make sure everything logs in, you're able to access the internet and so on. So just check that it is in a decent working state. As with most inspections, we have a decision point that follows. So is the laptop in a working state or is it not in a working state? So as with our convention, we're going to follow the no branch first. So we're presuming that we've have laptops in stock. We've taken a laptop out to loan out. It's going through a inspection to make sure it's in a working state, and it's not in a working state, so it fails to turn on or fails to connect to Wi-Fi and so on. That's going to bring us to a new symbol again, which is a rectangle. So this is an activity which is necessary to support the service, but is not something which directly adds value. And we're going to represent this through the use of a rectangle. So the activity that we need to engage in now is informing IT support that we have a non-working laptop which needs repair. So we're going to add that in. And now we have a non-working laptop which has been taken out of the storage area and which is on the desk or the staff area. So we need to do something with this laptop. We've sent an email across to IT support telling them that they have a laptop they need to pick up, but we can't just leave the laptop lying about. So we're going to bring in a new symbol which is storage, which is an upside down triangle, and we're going to use this to identify that at this point in our process map we need to store the laptop in a particular place in order to facilitate the IT support pickup and repair. The actual repairing of the laptop would be a distinct process, but we still need to identify that the laptop needs to be stored in a particular area to facilitate that process. Now, we're at the stage here in our process where we've identified there is a laptop, we've retrieved it, is not working, we've contacted IT support, and we've placed that non-functional laptop in storage, but we need to loop back and check if there are any more laptops which may well be available. So what we can't do is just bring the process to an end. We still have a student standing there at the desk waiting for a laptop. So we're going to connect back into the process map, and we're going to start again by checking availability. So this laptop isn't working. Do we have any others that are working that we could send back in? So anytime you see a line which is connecting to another line at a different part of the process map, that means we're looping back into the process at this stage. So we go from placing the laptop in storage directly back into checking for availability. So check for availability, see if there's another laptop available, and if needed, you go through the whole process again. So that hasn't finished our process map because we still have a decision point. So is the laptop in a working state after we've had our inspection point? So we're going to go back and finish it off by assuming that in this scenario, we've checked the laptop. It is in a working state. So we are able to supply this laptop from stock. So relatively straightforward. We have an operational activity here. We're going to present the laptop to the student. Now, here, just to establish, we haven't finished our process because we still need to mark that laptop as taken by that particular student for a particular length of time. So it's quite important that we make sure to include a system update. So updating the spreadsheet or updating the file to indicate that that particular laptop has been lent out to a particular student. That will be a necessary and important part of our process. But once that's done, that brings our process to an end. So this is a relatively simple example of a service process map, but hopefully it makes the usage of the particular symbols and the mapping logic quite clear. So with a student request as a trigger, wanting to borrow a laptop, we have 3 potential endpoints for our process. Either we don't have a laptop to give out and the student just walks away, they don't want to make a reservation, or the student does want to make a reservation and they're provided with a booking reference, or we do have a laptop, it is working, and we provide it to the student so they actually walk away with the laptop itself. So a nice simple process map. We made use of process start and end symbols, made use of an inspection point symbol, a decision point symbol, an operational activity symbol for an activity that directly adds value in our service, as well as a generic activity symbol for an activity which is necessary but is a supporting activity rather than a directly contributing activity to the purpose of the service itself. That covers most of the symbols that you're likely to need when developing your own process maps, but there are 2 more that we can add to this as well. So one would be a delay, where you've requested something and you're waiting for another individual, you're waiting for another process, or you're waiting for another resource to become available, and that's represented by this essentially a half circle symbol. And then we have also a symbol here that we would use not of particular relevance to a service symbol, but particularly for manufacturing process maps, where you have an input or an output to the process as a whole. So if you're physically outputting something at the end of your manufacturing process, you would use this symbol, and also if you need to bring in an input into your manufacturing process, you'd use a symbol to represent that as well. All right, hopefully this has been of some help and will enable you to get started on developing your own process maps. just a few things to remind you of. Remember, you have to start with your concept. If you don't have a clear concept, if you're unable to answer those two questions, what's the problem that we're trying to solve, and what are the benefits from using our solution, then your process map runs a risk of including unnecessary things, or perhaps not fully delivering the benefits that your concept includes. So you start with a concept, and then you would start from your trigger point and build up your process map by examining each potential variable until you have completed all of the different potential branches and have a process endpoint for each individual branch. All right, brilliant. Take care.